first trailer was revealed, and it was this sort of new trend, which seems to be 3D animation, but with low
frame
rate, low frame rates, which, was used in The Dragon Prince, a recent Netflix cartoon. I know a lot of people were concerned about that, because usually when you think of 3D animation, you want it to be nice, smooth, and fluid. When you have a lower resolution, it tends to be more kind of choppy. With The Dragon Prince, it absolutely works to its detriment. There was no point in the series where I said to myself, this low frame rate is doing the show good. It was always either I was able to ignore it over time, or it was noticeable to the point where I was just like, I can't.
Yeah, it's like, even as a stylistic choice, it didn't really work that well. Like, it seemed more for cost-cutting measures. I think Spider-Verse does a better job of implementing its low-frame animation. Like, it's sort of like claymation almost.
Yeah, and what I noticed is that it wasn't consistently low frame rate. There were many portions of the movie where it was moving at a fairly fast pace. The thing that people were also throwing around before the movie came out when they saw the trailer was that the low frame rate is a callback to comics of old, because it's supposed to be like you're watching a comic take place in 3D. And in that sense, it does it amazingly well. This movie, just stylistically in general, is the most comic movie you could ever possibly imagine. I'm amazed that this is by the same studio that did the Emoji Movie. And it's just mind-boggling.
I mean, Phil Lord and Chris Miller did work on the film. Like, they worked on the Lego Movie as well, right? It just seems like they have a knack for...
They also worked on Solo, a Star Wars movie. Oh, wait, no, they didn't.
They got kicked out working on Solo because they were making it too good, so...
Well, Disney didn't want them setting the bar so low. Hey!
All right.
Well,
don't cut that out.
Let's just end it right there.
Yeah, this isn't okay.
Totally over here saying with the animation, like, it looks spectacular.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Web of.
Yes.
Sensational.
It's really, you could put any kind of, like, adjective and then the word Spider-Man, or Spider People, rather.
Depressive Spider-Man.
There will be a Spider-Man associated with it. One thing with the aesthetic of the movie, they had this kind of glitch motif, which fit with how they were working with alternate dimensions, or how they denoted if certain people were from alternate dimensions. And I thought it was a good effect when it was applied to character models, but not so great when applied to, like, the entire frame. I felt that at certain points it was blurry, and I think it was intentionally that way. But it kind of didn't look so great, because I viewed the movie in 2D, and I thought maybe it would have looked different in 3D? I don't know, like, did you guys see it in 3D? How was your viewing experience?
I can't watch 3D movies. I have my glasses.
Yeah, I saw it in 2D.
I also saw it in 2D, but I have heard from multiple sources of people who have seen it in 3D that this movie works very well in 3D, and that's probably the best way to view it.
I can see how this one could be, especially because it's animated and it's easier to do wacky things and throw things at the screen than it is with live action. But I've heard that comment so many times about movies that I then went to see in 3D that turned out not to have very good 3D that I always have to be really skeptical whenever I hear that. I'm not saying there are never good 3D movies, but I'm saying people are quick to praise them.
It's almost a requirement of any film now to have a 3D component, and it's always tacked on. But sometimes you get that little tiny, like, it's designed to work in 3D.
I am less skeptical of this movie than I am of most other movies being good in 3D.
In the movie in general, what I like, as someone who is a largely filthy casual, is that, it starts off being like, okay, I'm Spider-Man, you know my story, here's my story. Because everyone does know Spider-Man. If you know anything about pop culture, you know that Spider-Man gets bit by a spider, saves a city, eats a food maybe at some point, he's got a girlfriend who kisses, and, like, the upside down scenes are very important. The emo Peter scene in Spider-Man 3, which, despite having not watched it, I got that reference and was very happy that it was in there. And it's like, okay, you know who I am. And then immediately it cuts to someone entirely different, which I personally really like, because when people think of Spider-Man, they think of Peter Parker. Miles Morales is known in the comic book scene and has been for a while, but amongst general pop culture, he's kind of not as prominent. I think that's kind of one of the reasons that Guardians of the Galaxy did so well, that Doctor Strange did so well, because they are such underutilized, not as well known
Obscure
characters. Yeah, kind of more obscure.
Mm-hmm.
This is another Spider-Man, but it's not another Spider-Man. It's the best not Spider-Man movie about Spider-Man.
I think it's the best Spider-Man movie about Spider-Man, personally, but...
It's the most un-Spider-Man Spider-Man movie.
It's the best movie about Peter Porker ever made.
Yes, it's the only movie about Peter Porker ever.
It's the only movie, yeah.
Exactly.
When they're actually establishing Miles' character, I thought that the pacing was really good. It told you about many aspects of his character and his relationships with his old school versus his new school that he's at, where he's all like buddy-buddy with people at his old school, immediately contrasted with being an outsider. And his relationship with his policeman dad. Like, I liked how it was all very quickly established. And then there's a real beat that happens when he does get bitten by the spider. You're just sort of anticipating the moment. And that's when the movie actually starts proper.
When you meet his uncle, I love how it is such a juxtaposition with your traditional Peter Parker story where, you know, you've got the classic scene, Uncle Ben with great power, great responsibility. Miles's uncle is the absolute antithesis of that. Just who cares about responsibility? You don't need to be responsible, just do whatever you want. It's all about that juxtaposition, that it's kind of taking the Spider-Man story that everyone knows and flipping that and seeing what can be done with it in interesting ways.
I wonder actually, like, how much of it is adapted from the comics for Miles Morales. Like, have you read any of those, Chronicler?
I'll be honest, I have not read much of the character. I do know him quite a bit, though.
Do you know how accurate it is?
I do know for a fact that Miles Morales' uncle was Aaron Davis in the comics. He was the Prowler, yes. I feel like when it comes to all the essential parts of Miles Morales, they got it down, but I actually think this version was better than the comics, because they gave him an actual unique character. He's really bland in the comics, which is one of the reasons I don't like him. But he's unique in this movie, which is why it made me really appreciate it.
Once he actually does get bit by the spider, though, the entire style of the movie kind of changes into this comic book style, where all of his thoughts are presented through comic panels, basically. I just thought that was like a great visualization of what's actually happening, because they show that the Spider-Man comics are actually canon in the universe.
That's how it is in the actual Marvel comics, too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I found that to be a really neat thing they did there.
He's finding out about his backstory via the comic book for Spider-Man.
It's kind of trippy.
I just think it's like a really well done set of scenes, like within the school, and then when he's sticking on everything, like he can't control his hands.
It's just puberty, guys.
Oh yeah.
It's just puberty, right?
His uncle gives his great advice, where he's just like, this is what you should do with a girl, just say, hey, then put your...
No, not hey. Hey.
Hey. I thought that was just really great, because it's an actual Chekhov's gun, and you don't realize it, and then it's like, at the very end, when he does that, the Kingpin...
Actually, that's one thing that bothered me.
Oh yeah?
You know why it bothered me? So, in the comics, Miles always defeats his villains with that one move, the Venom Blast. He always does it, like he's getting his butt kicked. He's like, oh, hey, wait, I have this power. And so he blasts the villain and defeats him, like, with one blow. It always bothers me because it's too easy. He just always does it. I don't like it.
Gwen's hair is rip and rip because of Miles.
So to speak.
Literally ripped.
And then we actually goes back and investigates the corpse of the spider. I like how there's a lot of details that moment fills in, because what immediately follows that is he gets caught up in the whole, like, alternate dimension device laboratory. And so you kind of get that because of the glitching that the spider had been showing, that it was actually from an alternate dimension. So that's why there are two spider people in one dimension.
Yeah, basically.
But yeah, and I like how it just immediately transitions into the fight with Spider-Man and Ultimate Green Goblin.
Oh, I don't like Ultimate Goblin. Normal comic Green Goblin's better, but essentially Ultimate Goblin is Norman Osborn, but like he turns himself into this monster or whatever just because he wants to be basically like a super soldier or whatever, just like Captain America was. I hate it. It's stupid. And making him a giant monster is exactly what a goblin isn't. A goblin's supposed to be these small, thin creatures that are
But
green.
he's ultimate. He's gonna join the Smash Bros. Roster.
But it's awful. I hate it. It's not the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin's not some henchman for Kingpin. And he's not just some huge hulking beast that's supposed to defeat Spider-Man through just squishing him. That's not the Green Goblin.
Do you think they should have used a different villain then?
Well, they certainly should have. You could have used the Sandman, for example. That would have actually fit a ton better, because he's worked for criminal masterminds before. And plus, the Sandman doesn't get a lot of representation in comic book movies. It was Spider-Man 3, and they completely missed the point of him there.
Perhaps the reason they didn't do Sandman, because that would be harder to animate / more expensive to animate.
Oh, they did a ton of other extra details, so like all the waves going on when they were putting the dimension machine on. I don't think that's the excuse.
I think probably also it's just like to bring something that the audience might have not seen. Because we see also later on with Doc Ock how they
that was actually one of the
twists.
better changes I liked.
Isn't Scorpion in
Yeah,
Spider-Verse?
he was in there. I didn't really like him.
Yeah.
He was sort of like one note. He wasn't really there much.
You know that one gray-skinned guy who was always a Kingpin in that movie? That was Tombstone. They just reduced him to some goon. I didn't like that at all. I was lame. He's a much more formidable opponent in Spider-Man's comics. But talking about that whole female Doc Ock, though, that was one of the better changes in that movie. The only reason I like it is because she actually acts like Doc Ock in the comics, but it's a woman. Like, her fascination with science and how she doesn't care about casualties or whatever, and how she's just, like, completely devastating as a villain. That's what Dr. Octopus is in the comics. And if it was, like, a male version, it would have been a spot-on version of Doc Ock. But I still really liked it. It worked. And plus, they had a really nice twist there. I didn't expect Dr. Octopus to be that one lady.
I like how they set it up from the scene in the school where like
that
she's
was
on
excellent.
the projector, and it's kind of an exposition scene.
You don't even notice her at all.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, that lady's got crazy hair, and then you go there later, and you're like, oh, she's important.
Yeah, she's working for evil bad guy company. I wonder why.
What did you think of Kingpin and his motivation?
He is big.
He is an absolute unit.
wide
He is
boy.
a big boy. His motivation is kind of out there. It's, I guess,
mean,
reasonable.
It makes more sense to his comic counterpart whenever he was in Spider-Man comics. See, I feel like when you look at like Marvel's Daredevil, like their live-action version of Daredevil, with Kingpin in there, he acts more like he does in the Daredevil comics anyways. In this movie, they focus more on Kingpin having like the crime family, kind of. His family doesn't like his criminal activities, like especially his wife didn't in the comics. His son didn't like it. Then they become casualties to it. It made a lot of sense to me.
I had recently seen the Netflix Daredevil show.
It's good.
And so his portrayal, it is very good, but his portrayal in that is definitely different from Spider-Verse.
And yet both are just absolutely good versions of the character.
Would you prefer Wide Boy or Door-Heady Smashy Man?
Both. If you combine them, you have a perfect Kingpin there. Because that's what he's like in the comics.
His motivation to me as a filthy casual was rather relatable, because it's like, okay, well, it's one thing to be like, I want to take over the world because I'm evil. It's like that one meme I've seen pulled from a Spider-Man comic that it's like, he's fighting the dinosaur guy, and Spider-Man's like, you can turn the entire world into dinosaurs. Why don't you just use it to, like, solve world cancer? And he's like,
because I want to turn people into dinosaurs.
I want to make people into dinosaurs, yeah. It's none of that. Kingpin's motivation, flawed. Yes. Stupid, yes. But relatable.
I mean, that's just basically Kingpin in general. Visually, he was kind of weird to me, how he was basically like a torso, and then like his head was on his chest.
Well,
like, that was so weird
I don't know. I liked how exaggerated it was.
Yeah, it was
yeah.
just...
I mean, because like you look at the original comic version of him, it's not that far off, really.
Yeah.
He's already hard to take seriously in the comics, but this was just incredibly hard to take seriously.
He's an intimidating brick of a person. That's what he is.
This was just so hard to take seriously. It was hilarious.
I think that's kind of the point.
When he, like, smashed Spider-Man with his bare hands, that made me flinch a little bit. I liked how they showed some of his brutality in there. Especially on screen. We'd never seen Spider-Man die brutally on screen before. Like, shoot, it barely happened in the comics. So seeing him smash him like that on screen, like, they don't directly show him killing him, but, like, you see him smash him. That hit me really hard.
Yeah, it was very hardcore.
I was surprised that was in the movie.
Yeah, I was not expecting Spider-Man to die.
Really? Wait, I thought...
No, I wasn't. So, me being filthy casual...
Well, I know he dies in the Ultimate Comics, which is where Miles Morales was from.
I didn't see it coming. And so then they kill Spider-Man, and I'm like, whoa, wait a second. But then Spider-Man is shown in the trailers, because I remember that Spider-Man was in there, and I was like, there's parts of Spider-Man that haven't shown up yet. But Spider-Man's dead, so now what's gonna happen? And then Spider-Man shows up, and I'm like, oh, this makes sense.
He's the B version of Spider-Man.
He's the B
Peter
movie.
Benjamin Parker.
Peter B.
Like, if you want a comic-accurate version of Spider-Man, look at Peter B. Parker in this movie. That's essentially what he's like.
That whole scene with the train and everything, it was really, really good.
That's probably one of the better action set pieces in the movie, in my opinion.
That's actually one of the scenes in particular I was thinking of when I was saying that the animation was actually, like...
really good.
It's goofy, but it's also not, and it's a good blend.
That part definitely felt the most like a comic book to me, with how it was stylized and whatnot. And all the colors, too. The colors in this movie were beautiful. My gosh.
Oh yeah, it's very vibrant. That whole scene where he's dragging the corpse of Peter B. Parker because he just electrocuted him because he doesn't know what his powers are, I guess, at that point, right? He just sort of discovers it.
Essentially.
So with spider powers, how does that work?
From what I remember, it varies on your genetics.
Interesting. I guess radioactive spider, you can kind of do whatever, make it any kind of superpower. It doesn't really need to make sense.
Like, for example, Peter Parker in the comics, there was another person called Silk who also got bitten by the same spider. I hate the retcon, but this is just an example. She was the one who got the whole making webs part of his powers, because in the comics, Peter Parker doesn't make webs from his own body. He has to use web shooters, which I prefer anyways. Silk, however, got that part of it because of her genetics.
He gets this ability, and then he also gets the ability to turn kind of invisible.
Yeah.
And I also thought, like, well, is that really what a spider can do? I don't know.
Camouflage.
It's stretching it, but yeah, whatever. It's superpowers. That's what he gets.
It didn't bother me that much. There's the burger scene, and then they go and they're like, we gotta sneak into the lab. And I loved the lab because this is a scene that you've seen in so many films. The heroes have to break into the evil laboratory, steal the information. They even give like the USB stick thing, like, what is the name that's used for it? Like a
Goober.
A goober.
Goober. Yeah, Goober. It's such a trope that it's like, okay, you sneak in, steal the information, you get out. You'll probably get noticed on the way, but whatever. And then they just kind of subvert that in a lot of ways. How do you navigate the computer? Also, and then just straight up just taking the whole computer.
Yeah, that was great. I love that.
Just running.
Yes. My favorite line was like, the monitor's not important.
Yeah,
I don't know,
essentially,
something
yeah.
about that got to me. It's like, I guess you're right. It's just dead weight.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you're thinking, like, he's carrying the monitor and the computer along with him.
Yeah.
And then Spider B. Parker, he's like, you're doing good. You don't need the monitor.
When they are escaping, there's a really quick joke that happens. Peter Barker, or whatever, he really loves food. And so he steals a bagel from one of the scientists when they are escaping. And they're just like, even though Miles is there with the computer, their focus is on, oh, he stole the bagel.
Yeah, they're like, hey, that guy just stole a bagel.
Can I just say that
That's so
I am
good.
so happy that it wasn't Oscorp, because my gosh, they use Oscorp all the time in Spider-Man movies. They did another company in there called Alchemix that I was so glad they referenced, first of all, because it's actually more of a Spider-Man 2099 company. It was so refreshing to see something new.
Yeah, that's really kind of what the whole film is like. It is taking the Spider-Man universe and doing something a bit different that people haven't maybe seen before, or at least in film form.
For a casual audience, like me.
It felt like a really big love letter to this character, too.
The Gwen reveal and Gwen in general is kind of a problem.
Do tell.
So she uses her Spidey sense to sense that she should go to the school because she's there a week before. Fine. Then she uses it again to figure out that she should be at the lab place. Okay. And then somehow she infiltrates it and then shows up to save the day. It's kind of a little too... I don't know what the word for that would be.
Convenient.
Convenient?
Contrived.
Contrived, convenient, yes. As I was thinking about it, I think Gwen is probably my least favorite character from the movie. She's prominent enough to be like an actual character, but not fleshed out enough to really like make sense.
Also, call me shallow, but I thought her facial piercings looked really dumb.
Oh, yeah. I do too.
I personally didn't have an issue with it.
Her whole backstory, why she was even there in earlier scenes, was just her spider sense told her, this place might be important, and I'll figure it out. Why isn't it similar to the other spider people? Because, like, she gets pulled in a week earlier than everyone else for some reason. It's not really clearly explained.
I think if they had cut out the scene with her at the beginning and just had her start at the lab, it would have made so much more sense. Because when you add into the fact that the scene with her at the school, as much as I love that, it makes no sense for her to not share her name. She introduces herself as Gwanda, because I can't share my real name for some odd reason, despite being from an alternate universe and literally no one knowing who I am here.
Yeah.
Like, it makes zero sense for her not to share her name.
That's interesting, because at the time before I realized that she was going to turn out to be Gwen Stacy, I just assumed that she didn't want to tell Miles her real name because she thought he was weird. But in hindsight, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I guess it does sort of make sense. It would have made so much more sense if they have the exact same scene, but have it be with this universe's Gwen Stacy.
Why wasn't Peter B. Parker getting a little bit traumatized? Because if they're basing him off of the 616 version of Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy should be dead, at least in his universe. Seeing her alive would at least bring up some memories.
Wasn't, like, the death of Gwen Stacy, like, a big comic moment that
It
happens?
was.
Like, isn't
It was
sort
one of his biggest
Spider-Man's
moments.
fault?
Yeah.
Almost? Like, he isn't
I'm
able
so
to
surprised.
save her.
And then it happened in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it was the most hilarious scene in the movie.
Oh gosh. So it's either that Gwen Stacy didn't die for Peter B. Parker, she didn't exist, or they just completely forgot, which is kind of what I'm guessing.
Continuing onward, they meet Spider-Gwen and they're like, well, what do we do now? Let's go visit Aunt May. And then you're like, okay.
Yeah, and then Aunt May turns out to be awesome. It just, like, has this underground bunker from the Spider-Man that has died in the universe that has all of his gear, and then we meet more spider people. They weren't that developed in the film, and I don't know, I would have liked it if they had a bit more screen time, but then again, that might just be my own take on them being there. Like, I didn't think Spider-Pig was really necessary or really added much, but I don't know. What do you think?
The primary purpose of the other B-level Spider-Man people being Penny Parker, Spider-Noir, and Spider-Pig is not to be fleshed out characters. They're not designed to be protagonists. Their primary purpose is to show just how diverse the multiverse of the Spider-Man is, and to be a comedic relief for all intents and purposes. Up to this point, you've got pretty basic. Spider B. Parker, almost identical to regular Peter Parker, he's just slightly different. Gwen Stacy, similar story, similar universe, not the same obviously, but believable. The other ones are really out there. You've got Spider-Noir, who lives in a black and white world, and everything is black and white, and he's black and white. Tough character. He's also voiced by Nicolas Cage, which I didn't realize until afterwards. That's incredible.
That was great.
You've got Penny Parker, who's literal anime girl with a mech. So it's like, okay, completely different universe. At the farthest realm of believability, Spider-Pig, who is literally just a Looney Tunes character. And that's it. I mean, that's
his entire
who
character.
he is.
Also, the message of the movie is like Spider-Man is a metaphor for everyone's struggles, and so by having these wildly diverse characters, they're showing how it really can apply to everyone.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I wouldn't agree with that entirely, but it's nice.
One character we kind of talked about, but not really, was the Prowler.
Oh my goodness, I love it.
Yeah, like he had just sort of been in the background, and I almost forgot about him being in the movie until he showed up in the last act, where he turns out to be Miles's uncle. The whole twist with him was kind of obvious with how his dad kept trying to call him and he just was not available. It just seemed really suspect.
I think I was supposed to.
Definitely agree.
To me, if it was supposed to, it failed horribly because I didn't see it coming.
Oh, really?
It could be because I'm a filthy casual, but I did not see it coming at all.
Maybe it's just because it's like classic Spider-Man. It's always some person that's related to Spider-Man in some sort of fashion that are the antagonists usually. Maybe that's just what kind of gave it away for me. Because yeah, I wasn't aware of like the comics and his presence in them.
Quick aside, Prowler suit, man,
Yes.
that's so tasty. I love that design. Love it. Love it.
Oh yeah, that's great.
I was rather fond of how they finally gave Prowler like a lot of screen time. He was technically in Spider-Man Homecoming, Aaron Davis, but he didn't get to show himself off as Prowler. I am so happy they had him in this movie because he was one of those most underrated Spider-Man characters in my opinion. I was sad, though, that they killed him off.
In the scene where Prowler has Miles, he's got him in his hand, and he's about to kill him, and Miles takes off his mask to show that she's his family. That moment was interesting, because Prowler slowly puts the mask back on, but then immediately gets killed by Kingpin. I thought that was shocking, but not because he gets killed right away, but just because it almost seemed like Prowler was going to kill Miles, but didn't want to see his face while doing it so that he wouldn't associate him killing Miles. It's him killing Spider-Man, not Miles. It sort of gets undercut by him just immediately getting killed by Kingpin. It didn't fit because, like, Kingpin usually beats up and clobbers.
I mean, he'll shoot people.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. It just seemed a bit like Prowler was about to kill him.
I don't think he was about to kill him. That's not the way I interpreted that scene.
That's just me reading into it.
Personally, I'm a little disappointed we never got to see the heroic side of Prowler, because in the comics, after he gets confronted by Peter Parker, he decides to put up his criminal ways of being a cat burglar and becomes a superhero. At the very least, we got a really good rendition of him, where they made him intimidating, they made him actually a really good villain, because if we're not going to get him as a hero, make him a good villain. And his death was not only shocking, but heartbreaking, honestly.
The trailer was just the ending of the movie, leading up to the climax of the film. Was what it was, where he gets the black suit, and I think it's implied that he takes one of the spider suits in the underground bunker and graffitis it.
He vandalizes. Honestly, it's vandalism.
Sheer vandalism. That is his superhero transformation, and it is great.
And I think it's really important, too, that he makes his own suit, because so much of the film is about him, and he is trying to be Spider-Man. You know, he's wearing the stupid fake costume.
Oh, yeah.
He's trying to learn from the other guys how to be Spider-Man. He's trying to be someone else, but then he realizes that, oh, it's not about being someone else, it's about being me! Which is kind of cliched, but I liked it.
I also like how they portray all of the universes as different comic books. Like, whenever the characters are introducing themselves, it's a new comic panel, basically, or the cover.
That was great. I loved that.
The actual ending sequence with all of the spider people, that was kind of trippy. It's like everything's getting ripped apart from different dimensions, maybe smattered together. It kind of felt like a video game, because like video games often do that with like floating platforms.
It's obvious, but it's also very reminiscent of a lot of graffiti art, which is an obvious thing because that's what he does is graffiti art. It was really colorful, it was constant movement, it was all really good, and then it all leads up to Spider-Man beating the bad guy, which is stereotypical Spider-Man story, but yeah.
He delivers the final blow with, hey.
Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
And it's so unexpected, you don't see it coming at all.
No.
But then he does it, and you're just like, that's a wonderful moment.
I do wonder, at least from what I'd heard, they have plans to make sequel films in the Spider universe. This movie is sort of a jumping off point for other alt-dimension stories.
I don't see the point of making any other movies for this, to be honest. It was nice as a standalone film, but it doesn't really need any more.
I honestly don't think this movie needs a sequel. Like, I've heard people be like, go see Spider-Verse so that it makes lots of money so that it gets a sequel, and that's cool and all. I want it to perform well, and from what I've heard, it hasn't been.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I've heard that it's been underperforming.
Even though it's the best Spider-Man movie, don't at me.
Because people don't watch animated movies. Because animated movies are for kids. No, only kids watch animated. I love that scene with Spider-Pig where he's like, you got a problem with cartoons? And he just beats up the guy.
Yeah, that was great.
I love that. Honestly, if they make more, cool. I don't think they'll be as good as this, but as it stands right now, I'd be okay with it.
I'm going to say this was the best Spider-Man movie as a Spider-Man fan.
As a not Spider-Man fan, I would agree with that. It was a very good movie.
As a dedicated casual who loves the Raimi movies and has almost no other experience with Spider-Man, I can see definitely why Peter B. Parker was more like what I understand the comic version of Peter is like. I personally prefer the Raimi version, I guess because I'm a casual.
Ooh. Bad call.
I'm not saying like the Raimi version is a deeper character or something, but he's more relatable for me. so I enjoy him more.
Now I know Joggin's a casual. He doesn't like Infinity War. He didn't think this one was better than the Raimi films.
Look, man, Amazing Spider-Man 2, though.
Oh,
Masterpiece.
No, it's not.
I haven't seen it. That's just what I'm gonna claim it as.
You guys, you're just all casuals. I'm sorry.
You got your recommendations. Go watch it. Spend the money. Watch it in 3D. Tell us if it's better in 3D. Watch it in 2D and agree with us that it probably would have been better in 3D. Watch, please. That's my personal recommendation and mission to you. All 8 of you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here goes a Spider-Man.
The Heart Osborn. First, we attack his heart.